Did we underestimate TCU from a toughness standpoint? And I watched both pressers, and I was very keen. And I heard Sonny Dyke say we were the toughest team on the field today. Like he almost couldn't wait to say that.
Mhm.
Did we underestimate them, or is like Michigan just that big, bad, and brutal all season long? And we were surprised TCU could stand in there with them.
Yeah,
How
I'll
would you go
start.
about that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to start and say TCU to me seems like that team because every coaching staff, beginning of the season, the off season, we're going to be the toughest, most physical team in college football. Everybody says it. It's hoopla. But I think what TCU has done, especially with a offensive minded coach, and again, year one offensive minded coach, they said it so much that somehow not only did they believe it, but they turned into it. Right? I mean, they really morphed into it to where by the end of the year, and I'll go back to the Texas game, you really saw a group of guys that had no business being on the same field from a toughness and physicality standpoint show up and say, we may be a half inch smaller, we may be 10 pounds lighter, but we're going to stand in here. We're going to play two gap football. We're going to stop the run. We're going to stick our screws in there. And so, no, I don't think we underestimated them. I think TCU got better and more physical every single week of the season, and it has not dropped off as they go here into the playoff run.
Hack, question for you, really question for you both, but I'm gonna roll this with you, Hack, first. JJ McCarthy. Of all four quarterbacks, when we walked into the semis, I thought McCarthy has the biggest breakout opportunity of everybody because the rest of them are known entities. Hell, the other three were hanging at the Heisman in New York. And you were right there getting your guys ready. You're the least talked about, the least respected, the least celebrated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're the youngest, so you got some runway in front of you. Did he prove the doubters right after that performance?
I don't think so. Outside of 3 or 4 plays, I thought he played really well. But the problem is those 3 or 4 plays were such big game changing plays, right? Just back-breaking plays. But you would expect that from a young kid who's never been in that situation, right? And I think that was kind of the gamble that Jim Harbaugh took and ultimately sided with by starting him and rolling with him throughout the rest of the year, right? You had a kid in your program who got you there before, had won some games, wasn't necessarily going to make those, just crushing mistakes. But did he have the upside of JJ? No. So they went with that. And, you got to live with that, right? And for first year, I think he put some things together, and we talked about kind of how the system doesn't really require a lot out of that guy, unlike some other systems that are out there and some other guys that were in the college football playoff where it was very much driven through the quarterback. The system, it's a little bit of plug and play. So it's really hard for a kid with JJ's talent to be put in situations consistently where he has to use those, right? And when he does, it's kind of that longer developmental game. That's why I compared him to Stetson Bennett. It's a marathon, not a race in that scenario, in that instance. And I really think that people are going to doubt JJ just because, again, the system that he's in and what they expect him. But I ultimately think that you take 3 or 4 plays out of there, and he played a fairly clean game and ultimately made some plays to get them back into it. So, taking that into account, looking forward for him, I'm really excited about his growth, and he's going to have to take a step this offseason, and he's going to have to take a step heading into next year. But I think that this is a very valuable experience for that young man. And as long as he takes it the right way, I think it's going to be good for Michigan fans, and they should be really, really excited about the future with JJ McCarthy.
I think you're absolutely right, Hack. And I'm just kind of thumbing through the stats here. This was JJ McCarthy for this season. This was his most yards. And I know there's stats, right? But 343 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. And it was his most rushing yards, 39, I believe it was, on the season as well. If you take away the 2 pick sixes, and you mentioned a Hack, and they just aren't pick sixes, or, hey, I sailed one and it went into the stands. He's got 2 more incompletions, and Michigan finds a way to win this football game. you're looking at it going, I think this was a coming out party for JJ McCarthy because I thought he played pretty good, certainly from a statistical standpoint, but also, coming back from some of those negative plays and getting back on the saddle. I thought his mindset was pretty good most of the game. I think a lot of positives from a Michigan fan base standpoint that you can pull from this one in JJ McCarthy.
So let me ask you both this then. One, did the Michigan offensive staff and game plan hurt him? Because that's what Hack was saying earlier. System. They abandon it like almost out of the gate. First play, you hit an ISO for 48 yards. Then you're 2 football lengths from the goal line. You're supposed to come downhill. They're in gun. We're running the Nick Foles special. We're doing all this stuff. He was effective in my eyes because of what they had been all season. Now you morphed into some other stuff. Did the system hurt him? A, and that's for you both. But secondly, look how aggressive they were in sudden change. Every turnover by TCU, every big game shifting deal, they came back with a home run. Hell, he hit 2 or 3 of them immediately back out of the gate. And again, the back end of TCU was like it was out to lunch sometime. You got 2 guys in the same zone. He did read him, but by abandoning their true DNA, do you think that might have hurt him?
Well, I don't think they necessarily abandoned it. I think TCU did a good job of taking it away. I think it's more so the way that they called this game. Obviously, he needs to own those 2 pick sixes because I just don't think that they were great
Decision.
Take the system out of it. I just think it was a young kid making a bonehead, knucklehead decision, right? Trying to force something that wasn't there. But the system in terms of evolving and being able to say, okay, our binky was taken away from us by this team and the defense. What do we do now? They did a piss poor job of adjusting and still staying within that identity, knowing like, okay, I'm going to do this to get back to this. Like there was no real artistry in that. They just kind of went out there and said, screw it. Like I said, and we're just going to throw everything at it. And I think when you have a young kid like that, it's really hard to put him in that situation because he's never been there before, let alone on the biggest stage for this program at the biggest point of the year for this football team. So I thought he reacted well. I thought they could have done a better job of kind of leading him to water. And then also, just trying to play the game within the game of getting back to who they were by throwing a couple jabs and a couple things out here that now TCU had to think about and account for.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I do think situationally, George, to your example, there was a couple of times where I don't know if getting too cute is the correct verbiage or getting away from their original plan, but you look at the statistics and they rushed for 4.7 yards a carry. So they could, Hack, you've always said it. Hey, man, hand the ball off. You get 4 yards a carry, just keep doing it. You're going to get first downs. You're going to score touchdowns. So it wasn't like they were completely shut down and made to be one-dimensional. I just think in some of those certain situations, they got too cute, to use that phrase again, and just didn't go and shove the ball down the throat or what have you. And it led to some misfortune and lack of points there at the end of the drives.